Yeah.
And it brings us to, a critical point in our deep dive, understanding the potential financial misconduct at play.
Let's dive into that right after this quick message from our sponsors.
When we talk about, potential financial misconduct in a case like this, we're looking at, a range of possibilities, from misrepresentation of the company and its leadership to, potential misuse of investor funds.
So it's not just about whether TCFGC was actually engaged in sustainable agriculture.
Right.
It's also about how they handled the money
Yeah.
they received from investors.
Precisely. And the involvement of, Kawaja with his history of fraud and his financial troubles raises serious red flags.
Yeah.
Was he using TCFGC as a way to access and potentially misappropriate investor funds?
Right.
That's a question, investigators will need to address.
And then there's the role of NCL in all of this.
Mm-hmm.
They were responsible for promoting TCFGC to investors.
Right.
And yet they seem to have overlooked or disregarded some very, very basic due diligence.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
Well, it's important to understand that the investment promotion landscape can be a bit of a Wild West.
Yeah.
While there are regulations in place, they're not always sufficient to prevent bad actors from taking advantage of loopholes and exploiting investors. And unfortunately, it's not uncommon for promoters to prioritize profits over proper due diligence.
So in their eagerness to attract investors and earn commissions, NCL might have turned a blind eye to Kawaja's questionable background and the lack of transparency surrounding TCFGC.
That's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
And then there's the use of, Duncan Bannatyne's name and image.
Right.
That's a classic example of a tactic designed to, create this false sense of security and legitimacy.
It plays on people's trust.
Right.
In a well-known figure,
Right.
They see Bannatyne's name associated with TCFGC and they assume it must be a sound investment.
Exactly. It's what we call the halo effect. People tend to transfer, their positive feelings about a celebrity or a brand onto something associated with that person or entity. And in this case, NCL was exploiting Bannatyne's reputation for their own gain.
It's not just about misleading investors.
Right.
It's also about potentially damaging Bannatyne's reputation.
Yeah.
He's built a career on being a savvy businessman.
Right.
And now his name's being linked to this potentially shady operation through no fault of his own.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why falsely using someone's endorsement is, not only unethical, but also illegal.
Right.
It can have serious repercussions for both the individual whose name is being used and for the company that's, engaging in this deceptive practice.
So we've got potential financial misconduct on the part of TCFGC and its leadership.
Yeah.
We've got questionable promotional tactics from NCL.
Right. And
then we've got this mysterious offshore firm,
Yeah.
Westbrook Associates.
Mm-hmm.
How does Westbrook fit into this whole picture?
That's one of the most intriguing and potentially troubling aspects of this case. We know very little about Westbrook Associates.
Right.
They're registered in Gibraltar.
Yeah.
Which is often seen as, a tax haven and a jurisdiction with, less stringent corporate transparency requirements.
So it's harder to trace their activities.
Right.
And to determine who's behind the company.
Exactly. And that raises concerns about whether, Westbrook was used as a vehicle to move investor funds offshore.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially shielding those funds from scrutiny or even, siphoning them off for personal gain.
So investors' money could have been routed through Westbrook.
Right.
Making it much more difficult to track and recover.
That's a real possibility.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the need for greater transparency in the investment world, particularly when it comes to, offshore entities.
It's all starting to feel a bit like a financial thriller.
Right.
You've got a potentially fraudulent company,
Yeah.
misleading marketing tactics, and a shadowy offshore firm. What happens next? Where do we go from here?
Well, the next step is for investigators to, delve deeper into the financial records of TCFGC, NCL, and Westbrook Associates.
Okay.
They need to follow the money trail to see where investor funds went, and they need to determine whether any, laws were broken.
And what about the investors who might have been, caught up in this?
Yeah.
What should they do if they believe they've been, misled or defrauded?
Well, first and foremost, they They need to gather all the documentation they have, investment agreements, promotional materials, any communication they've had with TCFGC, NCL, or Westbrook Associates.
Okay.
And then they should contact the authorities.
Mm-hmm.
The FCA and the SFO are their relevant bodies in the UK.
And what about seeking legal advice? Is that something they should consider?
Absolutely. It's crucial for investors who believe they've been, wrong to consult with a solicitor who specializes in financial misconduct and investment fraud.
The documentation. Reporting to the authorities.
Right.
And seeking legal advice.
Yeah.
These are the key steps for anyone who thinks they might have been affected by this situation.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that, time is of the essence.